Guess we'll get started. It is June 4th, 2025 at 6:04 p.m. I'd like to welcome you all to the Maple Run Unified School District Board of Directors meeting. And the first item on the agenda is the agenda review. Any issues with the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is accepted without objection. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we're at the visitor section of the agenda. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the board in the visitor section? Okay, anybody online yet that wishes to address the board?
Not yet.
Okay, so I'll read our preface. The public comment visitor section of the meeting is an opportunity for community members to address issues of concern about policy, budget, or administrative matters, or to share ideas about how we can work together to improve our schools. We value input and respect divergent views. We ask you to limit your remarks to time constraints of 3 minutes per topic and refrain from airing grievances with individual members of the school community, including respecting the privacy of students and the parents. And those attending remotely can type their name in the comment section and we'll address them later. So you need to state your name and town you're from.
Okay. Hi, my name is Bobby Jo. I am in the St. Louis city. I have two topics and we'll be quick. So my first topic is busing for children. I think back in the day, there's a song to say, we used to merge buses between city and town. And I know numbers have gone up, behaviors and staffing issues have caused, it not to be manageable at this time, and school time being different. But I also feel like as a community, we should be thinking about the families as well. And there's a lot of families that like daycare, for instance. So we have people that are in the city, daycares are in town, and daycares are still picking. And it makes it very hard for, our family members to be able to figure out, oh, my kid gets done school at this time, and I have to get them to daycare at this time, vice versa, depending like the school that they go to. I don't know if there's any way to manage like helping in that sense, just because like as a community we come together and grow. And I think it'd be maybe worthwhile talking about merging busing again. I get staffing on buses, but I had some ideas about, I don't know if it's, paraeducators are short and stuff like that, but what about utilizing in our community? Like seniors, they always need community service. What about having seniors ride the bus and help monitor? There's also, senior citizens that like to volunteer. Just throwing those ideas out for, bus monitors. I don't know if it's due to budgeting and buses like not having enough. Totally love our city, the beautifulness of it, but maybe coming together with like the city council to talk about and maybe collabing for some extra bus funding. I'm not sure where the resources come from, but just spitballing some ideas out here. Just because I know, which will go to my second topic, I live in the city, my kids go to town. I find I manage it. It makes it a little difficult, with Wednesdays, stuff like that. But I think it'd be worthwhile to like think about maybe merging again somehow to help accommodate that, just because childcare is very hard to find these days and even harder if you're trying to look in your school district. That and like after school programs get super filled because they kind of almost sometimes end up being like an after school babysitting program. So it's hard in that aspect. My second topic is, so I live in the city, my kids go to town. They have been in town since kindergarten. I moved to the city like 4 years ago and they were able to stay in that. But now I have 2 younger children that I have to do the lottery for each year. I think maybe with like my fear waiting for the lottery and then having the fear of worrying like my kid having to go to like city school if like they don't get picked. I'm not sure if there's still like a way to grandfather kids in or think about those areas too, just because if you have siblings in that area, I think it would be beneficial, just because I know I was stressed all year waiting to find out the whole agenda. Maybe thinking about assuring parents, oh, if their siblings go, like we can make sure they're going, just that idea as well. Sorry, short and sweet.
Thank you. Erin, is there anyone online that wants to comment?
Nobody's responded.
Okay, well, hearing none, we're going to move on.
Thank you.
To our agenda. Next item is the consent agenda. There are 3 items on the consent agenda: the minutes, the media packet, and our work plan. Does anyone need to pull anything out to discuss? Hearing none, the consent agenda is accepted without objection. Reports to the board. We have our student board representatives report first.
Do we want to recognize the seniors first? Or we want to hear from them first?
Do we want to recognize them first? We certainly can.
Yeah.
We have 3 seniors on the, as representatives on the board: Cooper, O'Connell, Amelia Wallace, and Mackenzie Smith. And, hi Amelia, I was looking for her. Mackenzie's not here, correct?
No, she's got a band concert.
Okay. Well, we have a small token of our appreciation. We appreciate the work that you all do for the school and for us, and your involvement with a lot of the committees that you're on external to the school board. So we have,
Yeah.
you go ahead.
You want me to go ahead? Okay. So we have for Cooper and Amelia and Mackenzie, and we'll get Mackenzie's hers. We have glass plaques here. Let me just, I don't want to lose, I want to make sure I keep the top on it so I don't.
Thank you. Don't screw this up and give you Amelia's. So there's one for you, Cooper. And same for you, Amelia. Let me just make sure. Erin did it, so I'm sure it's right. Yeah. So thank you for all both of you have done.
Yep, sorry. I know. I was like, I didn't know what I was.
All right. Thank you for everything you've done. You guys have been great. You've led a lot of good work. You helped this year a lot with the discussions with the board on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I really appreciate that. And we appreciate your service. Bless you. We wish both of you the best.
I think it's one of those like bittersweet moments where we're really excited to kind of like get on with this new chapter, but at the same time, like it's tough leaving our family at Maple Run, but it's true. I feel like it's like a close knit family, like student voice committee, even the board meetings, and just teachers, students. It's kind of that tough moment, but just from my perspective, I really appreciate everything the board has done and their dedication to the community and just their receptiveness to the community and just their focus on our goals and just kind of taking into consideration our thoughts, because I know that you guys can't be there every day, and so just you being able to take in our thoughts and model it for us and just kind of be our voice to the public, it's really fantastic.
Can you stand there long enough for me to go?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Gotta get one for the Facebook.
Cooper, for your pull out your comment.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I appreciate that.
No, the best call.
Oh, okay, that's even better.
I'll let her get both of you.
You can get in there.
You want me to get in there too? All right.
Let's see who's trying to get out. Yay! Amelia, did you have any words that you wanted to say?
I'm good, but thank you. I'm quiet.
Can we acknowledge one more thing for Amelia? She's our valedictorian this year.
That's right. Nice write-up in the paper,
Yeah.
on Facebook,
Yeah.
and everywhere. So great. All right, well, have a seat, and we'll be Looking forward to Kobe giving the report tonight.
Yes, I will be. Yeah, I'm taking back the stage as per usual. I just want to say it has been an honor, like a true honor, to work alongside both of you and learn and grow with you. I hope that you also learned from me as much as I learned from you all, and I'll miss you. And I hope you all come back and sit in that same seat where Leah is next year. Yeah, deeply appreciate both of you. Anyway,
Very much.
yes, the Student Voice Committee has, I think the last time I was here, we had welcomed in our new recruits, but we welcomed them into our first Up for Learning session, which was last Tuesday,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, last Tuesday we had a session with Up for Learning, and our new recruits came, and we really focused on team building and kind of setting the stage for what our work is going to look like next year. So kind of getting everybody familiar with our Google Classroom, getting everybody familiar with our email, the way we communicate, and kind of some of our internal documents with like what are our roles and responsibilities, how does our meeting agenda and meeting notes work. And we've been kind of just sprinkling that in throughout these past few weeks so that it's not like a heavy one meeting that's focused just on onboarding, and really kind of spreading that out and incorporating some relationship building in there as well. And I think it's been going really well. We've had our conference room full many times these past few weeks, which has been nice to see everybody at the table. So that's definitely been exciting.
Yeah, I will share one of my favorite things that we did in the Up for Learning meeting was we did a kind of variation of, we called it kind of like speed dating, but really we all of the kind of senior members broke into groups, and each one of us kind of took a project that we've done. So like we had a group that talked about the strategic plan. We had one that kind of talked about going to school board meetings, and we timed for like, I think it was like 2 or 3 minutes where we all went around and shared kind of what we've done in our groups and what we've been able to accomplish on those certain projects. And I thought that was a really great activity for introducing the new members and getting them familiar with our work.
Yeah, speed dating is a funny name. I was like, yeah, we're gonna do speed dating, and we're gonna do it again next year for sure.
It was a hit, maybe not with admin, but
It was a
just
hit.
When I walked in and it was going on, I was like, what's going on here?
It's
But
speed dating.
I actually saw a lot of good transfer of information about what's happening with all the different projects you're doing.
Thank you. Cool. Does anybody have any questions?
I have to say, when I got here early and Leah walked in, I was having like a deja vu.
We went to
like,
central office. So the worst thing is we get all the emails. Leah doesn't get the emails anymore, and I had texted our group chat like, it's at City School in bold letters, and I told myself it's at City School, and then I pulled up to central office, and then moments later Cooper pulled into central office, and then
why is the door locked?
yeah, I was like, and the lights are off. I was like, And I was like, oh wait, yeah. So that's what happened. That's why Leah beat us here by
filled in for you.
Yeah, Leah was ready
yeah.
to step in. She was like ready.
That's great. Okay, well, thank you again, and let's have another round of applause for our students. Okey-doke. Next item is consistent policies to address bias and behavior issues. This is a presentation that I believe Alexis is going to present to us.
Yeah.
I lost her though. Oh, she's behind me.
She's right behind. She's gonna
Okay.
come.
My ballot.
You left the building.
What do you mean,
right.
Where do you want me? Do you want me?
Maybe by the mic, so you can.
If you want, you can stand like right here.
Yeah. Can I? Hold the chairs. You want me here?
That's where the mic is.
All right. I feel like I haven't been up here in a really long time. I've actually missed this part of my role, believe it or not. So nice to see you all again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a hopefully brief update to the board on some of the behind-the-scenes systems work that we've been engaging in this school year that is directly related to our strategic plan. And before I get into the details, you'll probably hear me say this a couple of different times, but I want to be really transparent that our bias system and our restorative code of conduct are only in draft form at this time. And they're in draft form at varying levels. So they are not, neither one of them are ready for implementation and rollout in August. So our goal is to roll it out at some point next school year, but we are not yet ready for an August first day of school rollout. So I just wanted to be really transparent and upfront about that. So there may be some questions that I can't yet answer and need to bring back to those work groups, but I will do my best. So to give you a brief kind of visual, are you doing, oh Travis, you're the best. If you could go to the next slide, you can go one more. So this is the timeline of the development of both of those pieces of work. So this reflects our progression, again, with respect to our bias system and our restorative code of conduct. So what this really shows is this all started at our community engagement sessions that we started in 2022. That then led into a conversation about our 5-year strategic plan. And at the same time that was happening, we had Creative Discourse Group lead a professional development strand for faculty. And I think in that cohort, there was about 12 professional staff that engaged in that PD, and it was a strand. So they met 3 different times throughout the year. And what came out of that PD strand was basically draft 1 for a bias response and reporting system. And then from there, we kicked it to our work with Starling Collaborative. And have them put together a really core focus group of folks that really got into the logistics and got into the weeds around the creation of a system. What would that actually look like in our schools? What would that look like in real time? And what resources or what additional professional development do we have to do to pull this off well for our students? I think what's important to highlight with the bias response and reporting cohort, that was a mix of staff, students, and administrators. So Jacoby and Amelia were actually our 2 students that were on that team and engaged in that work. And they can share, if they want in a minute, what their experience was from their lens. But again, then we had a mix of administrators and professional staff. With our administrators, we also had Becky sit on that committee. She volunteered herself, which I think is really important to highlight, that we had a human resources lens in our conversation around a bias system, which is a very unique perspective and is often a perspective that might be overlooked when we're talking about behavior systems for schools. So really appreciated her lens around HR. Before I go on, I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you want to share anything about how that group felt?
I felt just really grateful to be able to be a part of the meetings, because as an individual myself who is queer and neurodivergent, I really felt a need for something a little bit more robust to respond to bias incidents, and to be able to be a part of that and make sure that student voices were being heard felt pretty good.
Yeah, for me, I liked being a part of it because it was nice, I think, for me to get to learn some of the inner workings of how a system like this works, and I think it's beneficial for students to see that, because a lot of times they don't get the opportunity to see that, and to be able to co-design a system and to make sure our voices were heard and represented in the building of the system, I think is powerful, because in order for a system to work effectively for a group of people, then everybody in the group has to build the system. And traditionally in education, young people aren't asked to co-design the system. And so it's a nice shift in the paradigm that we were included in that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, so we wrapped up the bias response work group the end of March, I believe. And then from there, that draft went to leadership in April, and leadership gave feedback on the system and some additional things we need to dive deeper into before we're comfortable for full rollout. And then after that was kind of completed is when we kicked off our restorative code of conduct cohort. So that started late spring, that started at the end of April, and is actually still actively going on. So you'll notice on the next couple of slides, I have shared the draft bias response and reporting outline and system with you. So you have a copy of that, you can read it. I have not shared the restorative code of conduct draft because we are still actively working in that document, and it is not in a format to be shared more publicly yet. But that draft will be completed by the end of the school year. So we will be wrapping that up by the end of next week at the latest. And then again, that will get kicked to the leadership team for a deeper dive and additional revisions and feedback from there. So with that timeline, I'm going to focus for the next couple of slides just on the bias and reporting system. So if you just go right to the next one, here are your links. So that first bullet is the actual outline and overview of the entire system. It explains the why, it explains the what, and explains how we're going to do it. But then on the last page, you'll see there are still recommendations for things we need to sort out a little bit further, again, before we're ready to roll it out. The flow chart, I'm a very visual learner, and I feel like many people also appreciate a visual. So I have printed a hard copy, and that's what I handed out to all of you prior to the start of the meeting. So you can see the draft visual in the flow chart of basically how the system would look and feel when implemented.
Could you just point out to us what is different about, what stands out to you as the safety nets that are in place now that possibly weren't in place before? What's different now to make it more robust and to catch more incidents or students who are looking to disclose?
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually parking lot that. I'm gonna get through this section because I may answer some of those questions.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into the content of the system, and then if I haven't addressed it, I definitely will. So again, those links are just there for you to review. The draft is a pretty lengthy document, so there's no assumption that everyone had a chance to read that prior to today's meeting. So our why behind, where did this come from? Why does the district feel that this is important? Is basically because our qualitative and our quantitative data are showing us, and students and families are telling us that bias does exist in our schools and that people are being impacted when incidents of bias happens. So when we got a little bit deeper into that, we realized, okay, we have our federal law that we have to follow around incidents of HHB in Title IX, so harassment, hazing, bullying, and sexual harassment, but not every incident of misconduct that is bias and that impacts students' well-being is not captured under HHB in Title IX. A lot of things are not investigated and are not addressed through that lens because they don't meet the federal law criteria. We also have our student conduct policy, but we also said there's a gap there. That policy is pretty vague. We need to tighten that up, and how do we streamline and really communicate to staff and families and students how to not only report an incident of bias, but how are we then responding and triaging support when we are getting reports of bias. So that is kind of our why of what kicked this all off. If you go into our what, again, the big difference with the what between a bias system and, let's say, an incident of HHB in Title IX is we are giving students the ability to report anonymously if an incident of bias happens, which you cannot do under HHB in Title IX. In order to move forward with substantiation or a real thorough investigation, you have to talk to the impacted parties, you have to pull in the families, you really have to dive deep into the details, and students often underreport because they know I can't remain anonymous, and that can be very scary and very uncomfortable for a lot of students. So this kind of, to answer Joanna's question, this is kind of the middle step where it's an anonymous, they don't have to be anonymous, but it's an anonymous avenue for students to report incidents of bias either against themselves that they've directly been impacted. Students can report on behalf of their peers. They can report bias incidents that they see impacting other peers, and then staff can use it to report incidents of bias that they're seeing against students. So this is a student-centered system. It is not for adults to report incidents of bias against other adults, which is when that human resources lens kicks in, and we have a whole nother policy and protocol and procedure we have to sort out and address if it's staff versus staff. So that is kind of the big, there's a lot of things that make it different, but that is kind of the overarching highlight of there's been a gray middle area that has not been systematized on how we're responding to misconduct or behavior that is above just a minor infraction but below HHB in Title IX. And again, we have our quantitative and our qualitative data where this is happening in our schools. Students are telling us it's happening, but they're either not comfortable pursuing HHB or Title IX because they cannot remain anonymous, or there hasn't been a system that clearly articulates what's going to happen to me if I report something. And I'll get to that flow chart of what will happen in a little bit. But I want to pause. Again, I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you want to add anything so far? What have I missed?
I think a lot of the big stuff has been covered.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with a lot of the things. And yeah, I would just emphasize that this is a nice way for students to be able to report incidences of bias, which traditionally might just be swept under the rug or might be brushed off as a joke, which, you know, might not be a joke. And so this, well, it probably isn't. If you don't find it funny, it's not a joke. And it's nice to have a system for students to report things, even if they just want the school to be aware of what's happening. They don't necessarily need like to meet with the person or any punitive action, but maybe just be like, hey, just so you know, X, Y, and Z has been saying this, and then, you know, it can just kind of help to inform. And I think, like we talked about in a meeting prior, something like the education quality, like help to inform more culturally responsive teaching and things like that.
Cooper?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious about the how's this going to be implemented into like the younger grade levels?
I'm gonna parking lot that too,
Sounds
Cooper.
good.
If I don't get to it, hold me accountable.
You got it.
Okay. Can you go forward too, actually? So basically this just, sorry.
I think maybe you answered this, but if you didn't. So if someone does file an HHB complaint anonymously, obviously it's not investigated and doesn't go through the whole 9 yards, but if that person is guided, right, to go through this system, should the system be applicable? Because I would hate to see, kind of one of those, we want your information, not your name deals, where you may get some valuable information that may need to be addressed by an anonymous complaint.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking, but just to clarify a little bit. So with an HHB report, a lot of two things really happen. Either they just don't report it at all because they know that they can't remain anonymous. So they're living with that, the incident, the impact, and they're not reporting it to anyone. Or we go forward with an HHB investigation. If something comes, so that's a big logistical piece that we need to make sure we're very clear on and we're very tight on before we do any rollout and implementation, is if any report comes in that is potentially HHB or Title IX, we have to move forward with the HHB and Title IX process. They don't really get a choice. We can't say, this is an HHB complaint, we know you don't want to move forward, we're going to kick it to bias. Legally, we cannot do that. So that's that logistical piece of, we need to make sure and we need to sort out who are the people at the building level who are going to be receiving these reports, fielding these reports, and reviewing them. They need to have a certain level of training and awareness around HHB and Title IX to be able to differentiate this is bias or this is HHB Title IX, because the two pathways are very, very different.
Thank you.
In fielding that, if students are submitting this anonymously, how will we follow up with that anonymous student?
Yeah, so that's, again, one of the tricky pieces that we're going to have to figure out, because the anonymous piece has been the strongest part of this system that has been the most fiercely advocated for. But there's a lot of concerns from the leadership team around that in particular.
Because most kids don't understand HHB and Title IX type aspects, so they may not realize what they're reporting.
Yep.
And being able to follow up with the student. And I'm also worried about the fact that a student submitting anonymously doesn't want to move forward, just wants to bring awareness and has to move forward to HHB or a Title IX investigation. This may make other students not want to report lesser things.
Yeah.
And so ensuring that students are aware of what's happening.
Yeah.
Because I think at this level, it's hard to, even for us, it's hard to understand what's HHB, what's Title IX, what's not.
Yeah.
And for a 15-year-old, 14-year-old, 8th grader, it's even harder.
And I would take that a step further, and I would say a lot of our staff also struggle to understand the difference between even bias, HHB, and Title IX, because not every faculty goes through an intensive HHB Title IX training. We really only put our designated employees, the ones navigating those situations, through that training. So that's the other big logistical piece, is what is our professional development plan prior to piloting this, prior to rolling this out with not only staff, but also students and families in the community. So one of the things that we've started to very generically throw around is, like, do we just pilot this in one grade? Or do we just pilot this in a grade in one school?
I noticed in your recommendations.
Yeah, so we keep the scope really, really small to start. So then we figure out, oh, that doesn't work. Oh, we forgot about that. Let's get it cleaned up and tighten it up on a smaller scale before we say we're doing this pre-K-12 across the whole district.
Go ahead. You can go. No, please. No, you go. No, you go.
Is the concern amongst leadership and administration, like you were saying, around accountability in terms of the concern around maintaining not confidentiality, maintaining
Anonymity?
Anonymity, thank you.
So there's a couple concerns. So I think with respect to the anonymous reporting piece, it is around the safety. So let's say we get a report because people don't know, they just know something bad happened, they're making an anonymous report. But if the information that we get makes us concerned about either safety or a really intensive HHB and Title IX situation, we can't really do much with that if we don't know where to go next. And who are we reaching out to? Who are we gathering more information from? If it's anonymous, you can't do anything. And that feels really yucky from, like, a student safety, a school climate perspective, to have this information and just have to be like, I can't do anything with it. So that's one of the details that, as an admin team, one we need to dive deeper into and come up with some safe solutions. The other worry from an admin leadership team perspective is just resources and time. So we know that when we start to roll this out, we are going to get slammed with reports. The reports are going to come in fast, and one of their concerns is who is going to do this in my building? Who has the capacity to add this on to an already overflowing plate? Because this can't be something that just gets a little bit of attention. It has to be something that people have the training, the knowledge, the expertise, and the capacity to actually give this the time and the attention that it deserves. So I think if you asked, I don't want to speak for them, but if you asked any building leader right now, they would say, I have no idea who could pull this off in my building.
I'm just curious, is there like kind of...
I got 2 thumbs up back there.
I'm just curious, is there a sort of timeline that a report has to be in? So like, let's say an incident occurred 6 months ago, it's now being reported 6 months later. Is there a certain timeline, like a cutoff, or if you're like, sorry, that it occurred too long ago or something like that? I'm just curious about that.
That's a great
aspect.
question. Not for bias.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be any like legal timeline that we would have to abide by. But again, that's a detail that our school-based teams, our people working on this, we would need to sort that out and figure out, what is, but there's 2 sides of that coin. There's going to be some people that say this isn't valid anymore, too much time has passed, and then you have the other side that say impact is impact, and the impact doesn't expire. So now that we know, we have to do something about it, whether that was a year ago, 6 months ago, or yesterday. But legally, there's
Okay.
there's
And
no
then with HHB, there is a time
there
constraint,
are
right?
tight timelines. Yeah.
I was just curious because I figured with the implementation of it and making it more accessible, you'd most likely get incidents reported that have occurred in like the past year or even, yeah.
Yeah. These are great questions, so I don't want to rush them. Are you raising your hand or are you giving me a 5-minute warning?
No, I'm saying I have a question. But go ahead, Jack.
So my question is, if the reports are anonymous, how will the staff establish whether it's a legitimate report or a false report?
I think that's a similar concern is, I don't have the answer to that yet because if it's anonymous, we don't really have a next step. We don't really have we need more information. This is a clear, like with again, using HHB and Title IX as an example, a report comes in, we get a very small snapshot of what actually happened a lot of times and the incident, but we have the people. And we can then say, I need to interview these 10 people. I can watch the security footage. I know who's in that class. I know who was in that hallway. I need to gather a lot more information. With an anonymous report, you're kind of left with information with what do I do and where do I go with this, which is I want to acknowledge that is a huge logistical gap that we need to sort out. I just wanted to let the board know, like, we have not forgotten about the importance of a bias system. We are working on it. We have very dedicated people being really thoughtful about this, which is again why I wanted to be transparent. We are not ready for rollout and implementation, but we want to get there.
On the point of anonymous, I think it actually is important to have some form of anonymity because as a teenager child, it's really hard to go against leadership, people, your mentors or whatever it is. So anonymity report is important for safety of the child moving forward, or even staff, if it's another staff member or a parent. But it's a really fine line or gray space of making sure people have a voice to be heard, but being able to support the person's voice being affected.
Yeah, and 2 more things to that, and then I'll try to move on to the restorative. I could talk about this all night, and I know you don't want me to, so I'll try to move on quickly. But 2 other pieces that you kind of made me think about is, one, we wouldn't be able to even have these conversations right now if we haven't done all of the work we've done related to restorative practices. So that's really what the flow chart highlights too, is when you look at that, you'll see right now and historically in schools, when any misconduct happens, we often only have the traditional discipline pathway, which in schools looks like suspensions. So that has been the go-to tool, and decades of research at this point says that's not actually changing the behavior, and that's not actually teaching the skill and building different behaviors and choices in students. So that's where we now have enough trainers, and we've done enough restorative practices training district-wide where we've built our capacity in-house to start thinking more creatively around systems. So now 2 years ago, we probably wouldn't even be able to touch a bias system because we knew we didn't have the foundation of the staff to even lead and take on something like this. But now we're able to do it with a restorative lens and have different responses, different follow-ups, different ways to engage students and process with students. We ask different questions. We're much more aware of due process now of like we need to hear from both sides. We're not just going to assume truth on one side and not the other. We bring the families in. They're able to bring an advocate. For some students, that's a parent. For other students, that's a peer. But both parties get to bring advocates and support people throughout the process. And the restorative piece is totally voluntary. So if one party is not ready or willing, we can't really do a true restorative process, which is why we're still going to need to lean on the traditional pathway in some ways. So the restorative, I also want to be really clear, I see you, that the restorative pathway is not meant to take the place of traditional discipline, which sometimes that's what people think. And they get very scared and they get very defensive. There will always be a place for suspension, always. But now we have this whole nother toolbox of we should be using suspension for very specific behaviors and reasons and criteria. It shouldn't just be the only go-to tool in the toolbox that we fall back on because it's what we're used to. Because our data is showing us it's not having an impact. It's not changing the behavior. So we've got to do something different.
Just one thing I kind of like thought about, and I was inspired by, I'm like looking at, I'm pretty sure, like you work in IT, right? Yeah. I don't know. I was looking at you and I was like, okay, yeah. Wait, what's your name again? Sorry, I don't like to say you.
Yeah, my husband does cybersecurity, so I deal with a lot of.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. I was wondering if so when somebody reports, like if there could be something attached to it, like you don't know, and like if they give you like a fake email, like I don't know, like if the reporting came in and you were able to track it, accept their name to the Maple Run email. And then you were able to send them an email back to them saying, hey, we noticed you reported this. Would you be willing, if it's HHB or Title IX, would you be willing to give us your name? Like, I don't know if that's been thought about. Like, that was something they gave, like, and you don't even know this person. It just comes from, like, an automated email. But it will go to the person in their inbox. And I think that's probably, I don't know, that was something that I just kind of thought of right now.
As you say, you were on the committee. Where was that idea?
I didn't have the idea. I was inspired by looking at all of these information and technology.
No, I think that's a great idea, and I think people have a lot of ideas around how we could do this, and which is again why I wanted to bring up the second response to Joanna's question. It's that is a big part of it. The second part is who has the capacity to do this. So like when I hear that example, who is going to go back and has the time to, we have to, it's important, it's critical, it's student safety, but who is going to track those emails, who is going to do that IT work behind the scenes, then connect with the administrators. That's what our leadership team is going to think about. Cooper?
I feel like the issue with that would be is even if they track it, the whole reason the person may have reported it.
No, they don't know their email. Like it's just tracked through, I don't know. Like this is like something that I'm like it's like tracked through like a fake email that goes through, and then they send it to the recipient, but they don't even know who it is. Like it's still anonymous. The person will receive it in their inbox, and they still have a choice to submit their name or not because whoever's late doesn't know their name. Like in Apple, you can hide your email when you sign into things, and it says you tap hide my email, and it gives like I don't know, like that. Like, but you wouldn't know at all. Like, you wouldn't be able to track it unless, like, I'm sure you probably could track anything, but like, unless you tried.
And this is why we need student voice on
Yeah.
all of our systems conversations, because you think in a very different way than many of us adults do.
I mean, I wouldn't have thought of the Apple hiding email thing, so.
Yeah.
We're low-tech people in a
I'll
high-tech
take,
world.
do you want me to just keep going, or do you want me to limit the questions?
I don't want to be the reason we're here till 9 o'clock, so I think I figured out my answer, and if I didn't, I'll email you.
Okay, I saw Joanna's hand up. Can I take one more
Okay.
question and then move on?
Does someone have a question?
Yeah, Joanna had her hand up, I think.
Go ahead.
It's a quick one, I think. Can you just remind me, please, I'm not sure if you've already said it in this information, in terms of education, I understand that not all staff members are going to be educated in the fine points of HHB. My question is, have all of the staff been educated in terms of bias and how to help, students call out, call in, how to handle that if you're walking by in the hallway, or if you're in a classroom, or if you're in the cafeteria? Has that happened?
Yeah,
Because
so.
I appreciate that there's so many aspects of this that make it very, very difficult. But if we can work on changing our culture, right, that's going to probably have the most immediate impact in terms of people just raising their awareness, being willing to call out when they hear and see things, or being able to go to the support of a young person who's experiencing a difficult time about something that just happened.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, and you will see that highlighted as like a next step, is being more strategic with our professional development. So I think the quick answer to your question is we do offer topics related to that in different ways, but it's always been like opt-in and voluntary. It's been a strand. It has not recently been like a mandated strand that all staff have to go through. And I think part of that is intentional from the perspective of our priority was the RP training, and we wanted to get all staff to go through that first because it's so enmeshed and it's related. But now that we've again made a ton of progress with getting our faculty trained in restorative practices, we can now advance that and advance our professional development to the next step around equity and bias. Because I think you're totally right. We can't even expect staff to be able to identify a bias if they don't know what bias is, and particularly implicit bias. So I think it's a very valid question, and all I can say is those are things we're trying to tackle behind the scenes and just navigate with calendar and time, and how do we make that a priority? Because without the PD, we can't roll something like this out.
Okay, now I have to ask my question. She led me
As long
back.
as I don't get in trouble from Bill for taking too long.
You don't get in
No,
trouble
you
from
got
me.
trouble from me. No.
She's the one in charge, or they're in charge.
Pardon me. So you mentioned, again now, that everybody has to be trained on this, right? Because not everybody has, even the teachers do not have the language down. So this is going to show my bias. So is there a relationship between the age of the teacher and how quickly they understand this? And the reason I'm asking that is I'm old enough to know that I got trained in harassment way different, okay? And it was the whole, one of your coworkers tells a dirty joke and you had to say, I'm sorry, I'm offended by that joke. And then they had to stop. And if they didn't stop, you both went in HR, sat next to each other, and you wrote each other letters telling each other you won't do it again. And this has come a long way, and it's good that it has. But I think there's an age bias in here, and I just don't know if you think so too, or maybe teachers aren't as old as I am, so.
We don't have any data where we would be able to like disaggregate at that level and make that claim.
Yeah.
So we haven't really dug that deep into correlation or causation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Good discussion.
Good to move on really quickly
Carry
any final questions before I go on to the code of conduct? A+ on the tech. Travis, appreciate you. You can go to the next one. All right, go to the next one. So this section will be much more brief because, again, I don't have a draft yet to show you, but I wanted to give you as much as I could based on where we're at today. So again, this is all related around why we're doing RP trainings, why we have RP trainers, why we're doing response to harm, why we're doing bias systems. It is all enmeshed and they all complement why we're doing the SEL stuff. They all complement and build off of one another. So the next phase in our journey was, again, very similar, a restorative code of conduct, which, like I said, with the bias system, the why behind that is because we've now had more intensive professional development about how to build restorative school communities and how to respond to behavior in restorative ways. That we have the training, we still can move forward on the training, but our next step is how do we build that into our handbooks? How do we build that into our policies? How do we build that into our procedures, particularly around how we're responding to behavior? So all of our schools currently have a behavior matrix that is developed building-based and individually based on what works for the building, the resources that they have on site. One goal that we accomplished last year was we've aligned our behavioral definitions and what we're reporting on in Panorama. So now everyone in the district is using the same behavior labels. They have the same behavior definitions. They have the same outline of what an example of that is and what an example isn't, what's a minor, what's a major. We have received overall vastly positive feedback from staff that they find that resource and they find that template really helpful when figuring out how to document and how to track behavior data for students. The next phase of that is what strategies are we using? How are we responding to it? It's one thing to see it, label it, and record it. Now, what are we doing about it? And again, what has been ingrained in us traditionally is that non-restorative, more punitive response to student misconduct. So kicked out of class, in school or out of school suspension, prohibited from engaging in extracurricular activities. There will still be reasons and needs for that, but now we're at a place of how do we build in a restorative response pathway that complements that. And again, that really is asserting a lot of accountability and a lot of ownership on behalf of students and parents, because in order for us to be able to truly engage in a restorative pathway, the student and oftentimes the family has to be willing. So sometimes students and families tie our hands when we want to offer the restorative pathway and we have a plan for that, but they don't want to go that route. So we're left with more of the traditional response. But again, I urge you to consider one of the misconceptions around restorative practices is it doesn't teach accountability. It's a free pass for students. I would argue it's exactly the opposite of that. By having a restorative pathway, you are drastically enhancing and increasing the expectation of students and the accountability that students, families, and staff have to own and have in these behavioral situations. So this is, again, just our next step in that journey. And what I think might be really powerful is that I included the table of contents. So much of this is already drafted, but again, there's comments and edits all over the document, so it's not ready to be shared. But some of the things that this system is going to target is not only what are restorative practices, but how do you do Tier 1 restorative interventions in the classroom that are led and developed by the teacher? How do you do Tier 2 responsive interventions that might be done by a behavior support staff or a dean of students? And then even with those Tier 3 really intensive major behavior infractions, how do we still embed restorative tools for those big violations? And that a lot of times would include admin participation and involvement.
Well, one thing that I'm realizing I'm catching myself in right now, and it was reminded me after Jack's comment, is that we often focus on the accountability piece, right? We often focus on the punitive piece, meaning holding that person, accountable for whatever they did or said to the other person. I'm also interested, and I hope that when you are implementing your the first aspect of it, of the bias piece, is that we are focusing on the victim, and that we are making sure that they are being cared for, because we don't always get the person who does the thing, right? But we can be there for the student who's been affected. And even if that person slinks by in the hallway or dives inside of the classroom or whatever, we don't always have control over that, but we would have more control if somebody was making an anonymous tip or whatnot, to really focus on the goal, which is wrapping around that young person who's been negatively impacted.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Yeah, you can do a restorative pathway individually or together. When I say it has to be voluntary, they have to be willing to engage in that
Absolutely.
process. And sometimes kids, especially the people who are impacted, they don't want to face the person doing the harm.
Yeah.
So we can do a restorative process with the person being impacted while addressing the person doing the harm differently if they're not yet ready or willing to engage in a restorative process.
Right. I didn't mean it in the RP sense. I meant it more in the first aspect, and I processed it a little slowly. So.
Yeah. No, you're good. Saying the same thing in different ways, I think. And then I just wanted to add a visual of something that is embedded. You can skip that. That is embedded directly into the code of conduct. So this is an example of just types of the content that are included in this work that will at some point go out to staff. So again, this just shows, the MTSS, the tiered pyramid, and how we can be responding and building in restorative strategies at all tiers, from the classroom level to the major policy violation level. And that there's all different ways of responding. There's not just one way to do it. I don't know if you can speak. I don't know if I'm supposed to look at you, but he's a trainer. Can I ask him if he has anything to add? No? Probably not, right? Well, if you have any questions for Mike, Mike is an RP trainer. You can ask him outside of the board meeting. He leads many of our trainings for the district, and his classroom has actually been shown in the messenger, because he has completely transformed how he sets up a classroom to be a restorative community. And he can speak to the differences he's seen outside of a board meeting. You know how to get a hold of him. So the last slide, I am almost done. We already talked about a lot of this, but I want to show you. These are some of the highlights of the things we want to own and acknowledge we have not figured out yet. And we will continue to work on that, not only over the summer, but at the start of next school year. So again, running pilot schools or programs, the PD focus groups. We did talk about, we want to, like we did with the SEL work, we want to create focus groups that have students to give input and feedback on both of these systems. And Dr. G actually is the one who made a really great example of a lot of times when we do focus groups, we focus on the high school, but how do we expand that to grades 5 and up and get more of our middle schoolers involved in these conversations? Any final questions? Cooper.
I'm just curious about, I was kind of thinking, I know you said we'd revisit it, the implementation to younger kids, because I think when you come in terms of talking about this with younger kids, it really connects to the parents, because it's probably difficult for a kid that's in first through 4th grade, if not more, even sometimes high school students, to really process and understand what's going on. So is there kind of a plan to communicate with parents, whether that's at a parent-teacher conference in grade school when they're handed something that maybe describes HHB, Title IX, this type of thing, how to understand or maybe identify some sort of signs that may be occurring with their child, and then access to the support system, or just?
Yeah, I mean, how I would envision that is very similar to the work we've done in our SEL rollout, is once we get a little further along and more ready to roll these things out, we have people at each grade band that are really leading those conversations with parents and families in the larger community. So I use preschool as an example. We have really amazing ECP staff that are able to take our systems work and modify it in a way that's developmentally appropriate for preschool, and then sending that communication or pulling parents into those conversations in a way that's appropriate for pre-K and
All right, awesome.
kindergarten.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's very different than a senior.
Totally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was a lot of talking, sorry.
We appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Now we're moving on to old business. First item is Vermont Education System Reform Status and Update. And Bill.
So, a lot has happened in the past week. I think most of you stay up with the news. If you want a really good reaccountment, either read, there's an article in Digger on what happened on Friday at the State House. There's one in Vermont Public as well. But it really became to a place where in the morning they were close to having an agreement, and by the afternoon they were further apart than they'd ever been between the House and the Senate. So I think a timeout was called, to use school language, and let's get ourselves back together. They met on Tuesday to the House proposed a calendar to the Senate. The Senate has not responded yet for how they're going to work as a conference committee between now and June 16th, was the new deadline, to come back with something as a plan. The governor has said, and he said really well, I really appreciate what he and the Speaker and the Senate Pro Tem came out on Saturday. They are working together. VSA and VSBA have been getting really good updates, so if you read those emails, they're keeping you up to speed as much as, it's probably as good as well as the articles, but I can tell you Friday night, for many of us, you got an action alert as well as I did, and that's why I sent you an email that night just saying this is what I'm sending out, send out whatever you'd like, but a bunch of us were up just trying to say, hey, slow down, you're trying to get out of here. And that's the tone we were getting since Thursday morning, was they were trying to finish by Friday, so anything was going to happen. And it was trying to say, just slow down, just slow down. And that's what gets scary, is it always gets scary at the end, because people are in the mood of we want to be done instead of we want to get this right. So.
Any questions for Bill on that? Do you have a question?
Yeah. So the governor's sort of cudgel or bludgeon for this is that he can call the call the legislature back out of session. Is there, like, if they, this is going to mid-June, if they still don't have anything then, they just say collectively, we're not going to be able to get something done in this session, how long can the governor keep calling them back if need be?
Until he can call them back all the way through to January. I mean,
okay. So
we work on bienniums. We don't work on a year. We work on a 2-year calendar for the legislature. So he can keep calling back. Whether they come back, that's an unknown answer.
Okay. That's an interesting civics lesson there.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Oh, and geography lesson too.
All right, thanks all.
Yeah,
Bye, everyone.
Congratulations.
Congratulations again.
Can
Graduation.
I take my name
You
plaque?
can take your name plaque.
Okay.
Leave us a holder. Leave us a holder. You can have that.
You know, worth the shop.
Thank you. Come back and visit.
Congratulations. Bye, Leah. Have a nice summer.
Have a nice night, everyone.
See you. Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow, man.
See ya.
All right, moving on. Policy first readings. I need a motion to approve B01 substitute teacher, B07 tobacco prohibition, C02, student alcohol and drugs, B08, selection of library materials, F23, capitalization of assets as first readings, and then move them to a second reading and possible adoption at June 18th, 2025 board meeting. Have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second, come on.
Thank you. Okay, you worked on these, right, Mary Ann?
Yep.
In your party?
Yep, we had our committee, Bill Eckler, Karen Lenning, Joanna, Jessica, and myself. And it was, a lot of it was mainly aligning the two, the School Board Association's model and what we already have, and just some language adjustments. The one that did, the capitalization of assets, F23, we are adjusting it to $10,000 for a threshold. And that was pretty much the only change on that one. Behavior, no, that's not it. So we are looking forward to meeting again next week and continuing the work we have. And anyone else have anything to say?
And the library materials and the capitalization of assets need to be approved by July 1st in order to meet the quality standard.
Yeah.
I have one question. This revision update states that you added commercial before tobacco throughout the policy. Should the title of the policy also be changed to include commercial tobacco prohibition?
I don't think
Or is that
so.
not necessary?
Because it's a required policy, so I think we have to keep the title the way it is.
Okay, just,
We had some things we had to change there as we looked at it because of legal
Gotcha.
information we got back.
okay. Any other questions about the policies?
Just a couple on the tobacco. So if we're adding commercial to that, like, does that leave a loophole where, like, theoretically, if someone's growing tobacco or something, that they can, like, bypass this if it's not a commercial tobacco product?
I
Maybe
don't-
Jess could speak to that, because I didn't even catch that.
I don't think that would be one. Oh,
I
sorry.
think it would be a long shot that someone's got a tobacco crop in their backyard.
I don't think tobacco can grow in New England.
I mean, I straight up don't know.
There are strains of tobacco that can be grown in New England, and some people do grow it for medicinal reasons.
I'm wondering if that, because we had Amy Brewer come, and she had also added some language about if it was for ceremonial purposes, students could have it like in a pouch.
Okay,
But-
that makes sense.
But then that was, the attorney said we could not have that as
Oh,
an
okay.
exception. So I don't know, now thinking about it, if commercial was added to account for that addition that we ended up removing. So,
I guess that would be a lawyer question then.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's where it landed pretty much too.
And I already,
So,
I already know the answer to this, but I'm just kind of putting it out there. But so it's like on the record, the tobacco policy references 7 VSA 1001, and just to clarify, vapes also count as tobacco products for that. In that correct?
it should, tobacco paraphernalia.
Yeah.
I thought
We did itemize out tobacco and nicotine products, correct?
Yeah, and it's, yeah.
The other piece.
Yeah, I wish it
Yeah.
wasn't tobacco prohibition. It really should be tobacco and nicotine prohibition.
tobacco products, tobacco substitutes, nicotine, tobacco paraphernalia.
So it's included in the definition, but it's not included in the title.
Yes. Yeah.
The federal law is pretty clear about any tobacco products are not allowed.
Right, but there's no tobacco in a vape pen, and that's the issue.
Right.
And so if we're being clear,
Yeah.
you know, some kids don't even know what tobacco is. 'Cause they've never smoked a cigarette before and would never even think of smoking a cigarette, but they're okay smoking a vape pen because it's, you know, oil.
Yeah.
So, there is a distinction, for sure, and that was something that I brought up. As long as it's in the definition, I would say that it's probably okay, but it is, semantically, it would be better if it was tobacco and nicotine prohibition.
My daughter's in Tennessee and her in-laws grow tobacco. I'm so proud. So we have a motion and a second. Are we ready to take a vote? All in favor of the motion as stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Just as a PS, he's converting to growing soy.
He was probably subsidized for generations growing tobacco. It's not his fault.
Well, I was thrilled that I stood next to a tobacco plant. I had never done that before, not like that kind of tobacco. So, awesome. Reflections on board retreat follow-up. Okay, so you have a great document in your packet that I also have in my packet somewhere that has outlined what we went through last meeting, and came up with the action steps from the strategic plan, and they've been wordsmithed to actually make sense. And if you look through them, we have the top 6 that we had kind of agreed on. And so the action steps are things that we want the district to do. We, the board, want the district to do. So we're not doing these things. We're assigning them to be done. And so my question to y'all is, after reviewing this, do you feel like we can sort of pause on this topic now and let sort of some of the actions take place? We'll, get regular reports on this, probably a couple times in the next school year, and see how it goes. What do you think, Nakuma?
I think leaving it for the staff, I think we've given them enough steps to go forward and to see how you get the reports on it. Because I think minus doing like community, listening to the community more, a lot of this is staff and leadership space to do it.
Susie, what do you think?
I agree with Nakuma.
Yeah. Jack?
Also agree.
Thank you. Jess?
Yeah, I agree. It's a pretty robust list.
It is.
So
It
it's
is.
a lot of work to be done.
It
I
is.
think that's enough.
Mary Ann?
Yeah, I agree. It's a great list.
Amanda? Joanna?
I mostly agree. The only place that I would want to add would be to the consistent policies to address bias and behavioral issues, because I think I was under a different impression in terms of staff education. So the places to grow, I would want not just board training on equity and diversity and bias, I would add, but I would also write staff or district-wide training on equity, diversity, and bias.
That's a good point.
Which one are you on, Joanna, just so I can?
The last bullet.
The last bullet, okay.
Yes.
I
So
want to make sure. I just-
on the last bullet, board training on equity, diversity, I would add bias. And then after that, I would write district-wide training for equity, diversity, and bias.
Okay, Carly?
I agree.
Charlie?
Yes.
Neil agrees too. So I think we're there making the changes that Joanna had suggested. Anybody have any objections to those additions that Joanna suggested? They make sense, and I think that was our, sort of, in concept, our intent. We'll put this away for a while and see where we're at when we do a time check on it. Thank you. And now, Board educational sessions. Again, you have another spreadsheet that has the update of what sessions we had scheduled and what sessions we did, and there's room for more sessions, certainly. If there's anything anybody wants to add to the list that they can think of right this minute, please call it out. If not, we can have it sent into Bill or Aaron, and we can, see if it fits. We covered a lot of stuff last year, and some of it kind of intersected, so, just look at this list. It's not as daunting as it was before, it feels like we've been doing some stuff. So if you don't have anything to call out right now, of course, Joanna does.
Well, I mean, here's the great, place for it, right? We just talked about it.
Yep.
So I don't know that all of our board education needs to come from the district, that, we could also look outside of the district.
Yep.
People in nonprofit organizations that won't necessarily charge us money to come and do some education on diversity, equity, and bias.
Yep. Good point. Okay, so we'll be looking at that probably regularly, and maybe we'll do some work on it to try to get some more stuff on the list. So new business, we had a couple of things here. Information on connecting with families and community. We have attachment 8A, which is a list of community events. And it's pretty comprehensive, but it is information on connecting if anybody wants to attend those or look at that list as a way to find something that we might want to, someone, or a party that we would like to bring in to educate us. That's something to consider. This isn't an action item, it's for your information and contemplation. So, any questions on that? Probably not. Next item is District Liaison Officer Contract Renewal. So I need a motion to approve the District Liaison Officer contract as will be presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second it.
Thank you. Okay, and the motion is going to be the presentation at Bill. You have
Yeah, it's
info?
the same MOU that we've had in the previous years, is increased by $10,000 over last year, or $9,900 actually, because it was last year was $175,100 and this year it's $185,000, which is a 5.6% increase. I can tell you that the city has had over a 10% increase in officer salaries alone. That doesn't include their benefits they're seeing. So the city worked with us on that when we first started talking. I can just tell you the DLO is invaluable. And one example was just this past Monday at this building. We had quite a few, we had him along with some of his colleagues here because we had to secure the building situation that was going on, and we couldn't go public with it because of how it was being rolled out at the time. And, but they partnered very well, and having a DLO that knows how the school system works was very helpful.
And did they get here in time, and did everybody feel?
We would like a little bit more response, but that's sometimes, they're not always right where you need them. So.
Any other questions? Ready to vote? Okay, all in favor of the DLO contract being renewed as described, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I'd like a motion to approve the FY26 to FY28 snow removal contract as will be presented. Please. Motion, please. We'll add to that motion after.
I'll make the motion to come on.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Bree, are you taking us through this?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Go, take it away.
So Maple Run needed to go out to bid for our snow removal. The schools that are involved is VFA, St. Albans Town, St. Albans City, and the central office. We sent the RFP out to 8 vendors. 3 of the vendors came and did site visits, and then only 2 vendors submitted bids. With that, it was Goslin Construction and Small Dog Builders who submitted the bids. Looking at the price comparison between the snow plowing and the salting, Small Dog Builders is far underpriced compared to what Goslin was quoting us for each of the years of FY '26, '7, and '28. And that was based off 32 plowings and 65 sandings. For the prices, year 1, Small Dog was $36,000 lower. Year 2, they were $39,000 less expensive. In year 3, it was $42,000. And we have budgeted $164,000 into the budget to cover, because we don't know what this coming snow year will look like. But my recommendation is to award it to Small Dog Builders. They have enough equipment to handle all of the schools. Are there any questions?
And is it just not happening at Fairfield and Collins Purley because they have their own ability to do it?
So right now, Fairfield is utilizing the town of Fairfield to do the plowing. And Collins Purley, I think they're having the Longevins plow.
I'd have to go back and look at it.
I'm not completely positive. I did reach out to Collins Purley and ask them if they wanted to be included, because they have been included in the bids before in the past as like if they need a backup. And Collins Purley said, no, we have it all under control. So that's why Collins Purley was not included this year as they were in the past.
Okay. So we have a motion.
Oh, sorry, Charlie had a question. Sorry, I forgot you.
I'm just curious as to the drastic, the significant difference between the bids. It's for the same services, just across the board. It's just one comes in much higher than the other?
Yes. Yep. I think because there is quite a unpredictable for salt, I think people are afraid that the salt prices might go up and they might start losing money. Yes.
So if, like some weird tariff or something on salt comes in and all of a sudden salt prices triple, does that affect, like, does the bid then get revised, or are they locked into what they've quoted here?
They are locked into what they've quoted, yes. Yep.
Perfect. So we have a motion to approve the FY '26 to '28 snow removal contract to Small Dog Builders as presented. And we have a second.
I'll second.
Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
You're abstaining, ma'am? Thank you. So motion carries 8-0-1.
Yeah, 801. Yep.
Okay, we have 2 unpaid leave requests. The first one, you have an attachment 8D. The person is Miranda Crow at SATAC, and she's a paraeducator. And so let's do this slightly different and get the info on that first.
I would recommend that you grant this leave request.
Okay. And she's a school year employee.
Miranda is, no, she is a paraeducator. She's, yeah, school year, sorry.
Okay.
You said it, I thought I heard something different. Yes, she's a school year employee.
Okay. You guys read the paperwork. Anybody have any questions? So I need a motion to approve the unpaid leave request by Miranda Crow as submitted. and recommended by administration.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Aye. Sorry.
Keeping us on our toes.
Opposition by saying no. I'm losing my mojo here. And any abstention? Okay, motion carries. And we have an unpaid leave request by Joanna Provatus, and she's a Sage Tech. It might be he.
It's a he.
Ionis.
Ionis.
Is a Sage Tech custodian. And,
I recommend that you grant this leave as well.
okay, so I need a motion to approve the unpaid leave request of Sage Tech custodian Ionis Provatus, as presented and recommended by administration.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying no. Abstention. Thank you. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the warrants. I'd like a motion to approve the warrants.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the warrants signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying no. Abstentions. Motion carries 100%. And next we have the superintendent report.
Yeah, I'm going to start. We had a great afternoon this afternoon up at Hardack. We had a chance to honor our retirees. We have 6 individuals who are retiring this year. And I'm going to ask Aaron, he has all this information. I'm going to read it. But we have 6 people who have done tremendous service. And I think if my math is right, they represented for Maple Run only, and some of them came here mid-career, 136 years of service to the district by 6 people. Some of them as many as 37 years. I'm not going to say who. I said that when I was honoring them up there. That person actually was fine with it, but I didn't ask if people wanted me to out them with age or anything like that. I would say that 2 of the people came to us mid-career. If we added their years of service to education, it'd be another 65 years.
Wow.
So it'd almost be 200 years of service by 6 people. Pretty incredible work. I mean, just to stand there with them, I'm very honored for the public service and the work they've done for kids throughout their lifetime. That's just remarkable. And it's something I aspire to for myself, and I know that their retirement will be a loss by the 50 or 60 people that showed up today. So that's one of those things that, we have many celebrations at the end of the year. That's something that's new this year. We haven't done a district retirement celebration. It's always been done at schools. So next year, I think you all had an invitation to that, and I understand we're all busy, but it was just beautiful to have it up at Hardack, especially today, the day, and you have those big garage doors, as we know, you can throw up and have open, and we're outside on the patio, and it was just quintessential Vermont.
Did you guys get an invitation to that? Mm-hmm. You did? Okay.
Last week we had said this as we were building a strategic plan. We'd have a public strategic plan check-in. We do each year with the public. We only had about 8 people showed up, but it was a really good conversation we had for an hour and a half. The PowerPoint that you have a few slides on that community engagement work was part of a big PowerPoint that I want to make sure I get to you. To all of you to be able to see, because you saw some of this in your work that we did at the retreat as a team, but it really kind of summarized all the work and all the goal areas. And so it's just a nice summary of all that. And so we used that so people had an idea, and we had people look at it and reflect to it, and then say, okay, so what are some things to think about? And one of the things that came out of that is, and I admit, I've been somewhat timid myself as a superintendent on this. If you had asked me 8 years ago, we used to say to our parents, we want to be clear about how we partner together with you, and these are things you can do as a parent, and these are things that we do as educators. And so I want to be careful with the language, because some parents will think we're trying to tell them how to parent, and that's not the case. It's a good example is like, okay, what's the best thing for me to do? And Nakumi, you and I have had this conversation. What's the best thing to do for supporting my kid to learn math? It's not to teach him math, it's to play games that require logic and thinking and problem solving. And most people don't go there. They think, oh, okay, so flashcards, or like get them to know all their basic facts. No, it's actually to play the math games with them, because, or playing cards without numbers on the cards, because it will actually have the kids have the basis in the thinking for the math that's taught by the teacher. And so it's getting some clarity on that. And we had a couple new people that hadn't been at the goal, the strategic plan development, and they said, yeah, that, and they actually had young children. And they said, that would be great to kind of know, like, what do I do to help? And so we're talking about, we actually talked for some of our work, summer work, how do we plan to do that work with parents and teachers together at the table, so we can have better clarity and about how that works. So that was the phenomenal thing that came out of that. I want to all invite you Friday afternoon, this Friday. John's not here tonight. He just couldn't make it tonight. But on Friday, we're going to be honoring his work. I think you've all been alerted to that on from 3 to 5 at central office. We're going to have we'll have some snacks. We'll do a lot of ribbing of John. He's been getting a lot of that lately. He's been getting that for 2 months. I think I'm the chief ribber. Bree's agreeing with me. Am I chief in that, or is there's a few of us?
There's a few of you guys.
Yeah, there's a few.
You guys are really good at it.
Yeah, so we're giving him a hard time. But in all honesty, as we all know, John's done a lot of tremendous work. He'll be with us next meeting. He's going to be bringing the data, the spring data, and so we'll be able to honor him there as a board and as a group, and we'll do that then. But he's done a lot of great things for Maple Run. He's done a really good way with good humor and good connection to people. So we'll be doing that, and then afterwards, the leadership team, we're taking him out to dinner. He and his wife and his child out to dinner. So, nice. Yeah. I want to just remind everybody that we're getting into that heavy celebration on Friday night. There's the NCTC Appreciation Night at 6 p.m. at BFA, and then we get into 8th grade graduations on Wednesday the 11th. I think we've talked about who's going where on that. If you want to come and you didn't select it, please feel free to attend. I encourage you. I really love those things. And then on the 14th is BFA's graduation. As we all said to Polly yesterday, we're going to guarantee you there's going to be the first Saturday that breaks the rain pattern for 24 weeks in a row. So we're going to try that.
Poor farmers market people.
Oh, I know. I talked to a couple of them
We can break
last
it this
week.
Saturday.
Yeah. And then just a reminder, the last day of school is June 17th, and then the staff's here on the 18th, and then we start doing our work. There's a lot of other events I could tell you about, but and that's going on, but there's just, as we said last meeting, there's a lot of things going on. I do want to say one of the things that just like touches my heart is the Special Olympics bocce tournament that happens it was last Friday, and it's just great to go up there and see the engagement and the joy and the love and the camaraderie between, we had all the Northern Vermont schools here for that. They're talking about adding another sport next year besides softball and bocce. So they're talking about maybe cornhole or something else, which would be great. But it's just that those are the days that just say, hey, I'm proud to do the work we do around here. So I think that's probably enough unless there's any questions or comments from.
Are you, so I love you and John on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bantering. Is our new assistant superintendent going to be on the podcast with you?
Well, I've talked to Megan a little bit about it. The question is where we go next. And I think knowing Megan, she's very extroverted, so I would be shocked if she said no.
I hope you do.
Yeah.
I hope she does.
Yeah. But that was a brainstorm because I'm a podcast junkie, and it's just a good way.
So am I. It's a great podcast.
Oh,
I love
thank
the one with Beth Complex.
Oh yeah.
I haven't heard all of them, but.
Well, Charlie and I were just talking. We did a marathon podcast last week with pre-K 8th graders and seniors, and if you haven't listened to it, we're asking
haven't. I'm
the
saving
same 3
it.
questions. And I don't know if Aaron put it all in one or is dividing it up into a couple podcasts.
I don't know.
And Aaron's been just a champion at keeping us on task and making it work, because there's a lot of production in the background that she has to put a couple hours every week into,
Yeah.
like taking from what we do and putting it together.
And if you did not already know, Vermont Edition, the podcast,
Yeah.
keeps up to date daily on the education reform.
Yes.
from the governor.
Yeah. They did a nice job on Monday. So
Yeah.
if you want to go back and hear that.
Yep,
Yep.
I did.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's a good shout out. I actually was interviewing someone today, and he started asking. He goes, "I need to say something about your podcast," and I was.
It's fun.
Really? And he's like, "Yeah, I was doing some searching about Maple Run, and it sounds like you guys have a good time." And he then asked me a couple questions about what we said on the podcast. I was like, okay, and I joke about how we have 7 or 8 listeners, or I always give it one more, but it is climbing. So keep adding to it, because we like to have it and get our likes up on Apple or Spotify.
Any board announcements, guys? Folks?
It's concert season, so I've gone to a concert each of the last couple weeks, and once I'm out of here, I'm going up to BFA to catch theirs. So that's, I guess, my announcement is I've been getting a lot of district music in, and it's very notable toward the end of the year how much fun the students are having with something that they don't get a lot of time in during the school day. They're engaged, and a lot of the pieces that are coming up are suggestions that they asked to take on, which I think is a cool sign of the strength of that program.
Okay, and I'm sure you have some board observations.
I am behind on my observation form, but I'm going to catch up.
And actually, all you all, talk to my daughter, you should be filling out those forms for the events that you've been attending, and we can call it a day. I was going to remind you all about the graduations and John's thing, so I guess I don't have anything there to say.
I have an announcement.
Oh, cool.
Well, the current president has proposed eliminating funding to 21C programs across the country. So I work in a 21C program, and there's a 21C program here. And the best way to voice your support would be to write a letter to Congress. So if you just Google After School Alliance, there's a pre-written letter that you can send off to Congress about 21C programs.
Now, I'm actually curious about the best way to focus action in that when we're writing letters to congressmen, my understanding is that it's generally best to focus on like the people who are representing you. So if I write a letter to someone, a representative in Tennessee, they're going to not pay attention because I'm not one of their voters. Is that correct, or is it more than that?
I don't know enough. I know that
Okay.
You could do
in Vermont, the Congress are supportive, like our Congress
Yeah.
people support 21C programs, but I would just do what you can.
It doesn't hurt to
You
send
can
it tell other people and
Tell
that you know in
everyone.
the United States too. They can reach out to their people.
Yeah.
Okay. Agenda for future meeting, anything? No executive session needed. Oh, I did have one thing to say. I keep forgetting. Jack is a member of the Regional Board Association. Help me with the right words.
Yeah, the state.
Okay, and he
VSBA.
shared with all of us those 2 awards that you can apply for. I was thinking of submitting an application for an award for our board, because we've done I think we've done really significant work this year, and all we need is the application filled out, which I'm willing to do, and a letter of recommendation, which he's willing to do, and a roll of the dice and see what happens. So are you all good with that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any business before the board, needed before the board? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.